Cheers! Welcome to Hopefully Here Reading. I am Hope, and we are going in on the Women's Prize for Fiction shortlist. I had to think about that for a second today because the winner is announced at some point this week. I think the 11th. I'm not totally sure if it's the 11th. Today is the 8th, which would make that Thursday, I guess. Anyways, I'm pretty positive that the winner is announced this week. So let's talk about the shortlist because I did in fact read it. I read most of the long list as well, and I have some thoughts. But first, let's have a sip of coffee. My soy milk got very frothy this morning. I don't normally use soy milk, and I didn't realize that it frothed that heavily. Okay, I'm going to rank this list. Do I have any overarching thoughts? I had a good time with the Women's Prize this year. I think the quality of books was really great. I enjoyed almost everything that I read. There were a couple that I couldn't get my hands on. I will watch out for those in the future because some of them sound really interesting. The Benefactors, particularly by, I think, Wendy Erskine, is that the author, was one that I would really love to be able to read one day. But some of these books take a while to get to me. Like Black Butterflies, which was up for the Women's Prize, oh my gosh, 2 or 3 years ago maybe. I only got to read last year. That was the first time I had seen it in my library system. So some of these do take a little while to get put out elsewhere in the world, I guess. However, in this case, the 6 that were nominated, I was able to get my hands on, which is lovely. We're going to start with the one DNF, and that is Flashlight by Susan Choi. This is a me problem. I just think it wasn't the right book at the right time for me. There was nothing wrong with this book. You're following a girl and her mother, I believe, and you start the book with the girl and her father on the beach, and then all of a sudden her father disappears and you move on from there. I believe the girl's mother is in a wheelchair because if I'm remembering correctly, the girl had a lot of problems with her mother, like a lot of animosity towards her, and her being in a wheelchair was one that was a thing that she really kind of latched onto for a little bit. I'm not sure where the story develops from there. I think I heard that sometimes the characters are not very likable, and honestly, it's a book that I think in the future I could pick up again. It just, for me, wasn't it at the moment that I was reading it, and so I did DNF this one. I couldn't make myself read it in that moment. So there we go. Next on the list, so in 5th place, I guess for me, I have Dominion by Addie E. Kitchens. Dominion was actually the first book that I read. It was a book that I had heard of before the Women's Prize and was able to get from my library the day that the Women's Prize was announced. And I had an okay time with this book. And I just mean okay kind of in compared to the other books on this list that I really enjoyed. This book was fine. It's following a family. The father is a minister, but you're really kind of focusing on the mother and her sons and kind of how the community sees this family versus how the family actually is and what they think of themselves and others. It was a fascinating look at religion and towns that kind of have these, I don't know, like social structures in place, and I found it absolutely fascinating. I enjoyed this book. It was just not exactly the book that I expected it to be. So again, kind of expectations versus reality is absolutely a me problem because it's not like I looked into these books before reading them. They were nominated and I picked them up and I just started to read them. But I think the storytelling was done really well. I think the writing was done well. There was just something about the pacing and the way the story ended that kind of fell a little flat for me, but ultimately I had a really good time with this book. In 4th place, we have The Correspondent by Virginia Evans. The Correspondent is everywhere right now. It is probably, you don't need me to tell you what it's about. You're following a woman and it is her life in letters. She writes to all these different people. She writes to authors, she writes to politicians, she writes to random people. Like, it's a really interesting look at the development and the evolution of a person's character through letters. And you see kind of where her relationships are faltering a little bit or where they're growing, like with her kids versus with any men in her life. It's fascinating. You see her regrets and you see her triumphs through these letters. And I do think that the author pulled this off very well. It's just not written in a way that I typically enjoy. epistolary novels are not my favorite. However, in terms of any epistolary novel I have read, I think Virginia Evans has definitely done one of the better ones. The main character in this, the protagonist in this book, was absolutely kind of the highlight. Just the way her brain, the way she thought, the way she expressed herself with one person versus another. Like with one person, something would be like a tiny little blip on the radar, and with somebody else, it would just be a really large deal. And so I found that to be really interesting, just in the way we as people present ourselves differently to different people in the way they are in our lives. Like people that you're super close to, you might be almost reluctant to be honest about when you're upset with them, whereas if somebody is totally away from the situation, you feel more free to really vent your frustrations about that. And I just found that to be a really interesting kind of idea, and you could see that with this character. So ultimately, I can absolutely see the hype of this book. I would not be surprised if it won. It just wasn't my favorite. I'm going to pause, take another sip of coffee. Next on my list, I'm actually kind of surprised with the order, because what is going to be number 3, I thought was probably going to be number 2, but something came in at the end and bumped my order all out of whack. So at number 3, we have Kingfisher by Rosie Kelly. Is that who the author is? Yes. I really enjoyed this book. You're following the relationship of a man and a woman, and she's older. It's not a sexual relationship or a romantic relationship, but there is an obsession there. There's like this mutual obsession with each other. And I thought this was absolutely fascinating. The relationship between these two characters sucked me in and kept me just absolutely enraptured the entire time. It wasn't a very long book, which I appreciated, because I don't think it's a story that could have withheld being a super chunky book. But I do think the way the author talked about this relationship between these people and the way it developed, and how it kind of like, you can't really tell, is it a toxic relationship? Is it a healthy relationship? What's going on here? I found to be top notch. I just really enjoyed it. I thought the writing was superb, and I had such a good time reading this book. And this book came out of nowhere. It was one that I had never heard of before. I saw the cover at the reveal and was like, that kind of seems intriguing. Like, I'm intrigued by this book from the get-go, just from the cover, and I had a fantastic time with it. In surprise, second place, we have The Mercy Step by Marsha Hutchinson. This is a heartbreaker of a book, and it is beautifully done. The character Mercy and her thought process, she's a child through this entire book, and normally I think for a lot of people it can be very challenging to read from a child's perspective, because it's just hard to kind of understand the way they would express their emotions and stuff as somebody that young. But I think the way the author was able to write this child and her thought processes from the very beginning, from the second she is born, was just done really beautifully and really well. And because you are so connected to this character through the entire book, it's absolutely devastating what this child is going through, and how she just feels so much responsibility, and you should not have that type of responsibility as a child. What she's going through, the problem she wants to try to solve, the feelings she ends up feeling. It's so beautifully done, and I think the way the author was able to make this book devastating but so readable and enjoyable at the same time is an art to writing that you don't see all the time, and it was done absolutely impeccably. I loved this book, and it's one that came out of nowhere. It's one that I got as an advanced reader copy, so I don't actually know if it's out in the States yet, because I got it through an electronic art program. So fantastic. If you want a devastating book that is still going to make your heart full, I would absolutely recommend this book. Which means my number 1, which should not be a surprise to anybody who's been here, or to myself included, it's Heart the Lover by Lily King. This was one of my favorite books of 2025. I loved it. There is, again, something so beautifully devastating and loving and incredible about the relationship that these people have, and the stories that they're telling, and the way it's been told, and the narrative and the prose and everything you want in a good book. I think this one has. I think Lily King is brilliant in the way she approaches writing relationships and novels. This book was impeccable. I have no notes on this book. There is nothing about this book I would change. There's nothing I want more. I just absolutely adored it. It is connected to Writers and Lovers. I have read Writers and Lovers by Lily King. I don't remember much about it. You don't need to have read anything else by Lily King to sit down and just immerse yourself in this book and have a great time. I want this book to win. I don't know that it will. There's a lot of stiff competition, I feel like, this year. Like I said, this shortlist, for me anyways, was really strong, but I want it to win so bad because I think this book, just the way it captures relationships that just foster and evolve and continue and shape you from young adulthood into life, and how they can just come back and devastate you 20 years later when you haven't even had contact with somebody. So immaculately done. This entire shortlist, I think the Women's Prize in general was pretty heavy this year, was a lot of really devastating stories, but at the same time they were all written so beautifully that you feel okay reading these stories and immersing yourself in them, and you don't come out in like a black hole. You come out with some hope at the end and with some lightness and levity and expectation of just things turning around and things are going to be okay. And I really appreciated that about a lot of the stories that I read through this Women's Prize this year. So that is my thought on the Women's Prize shortlist. Please tell me what your favorite one is, who you hope to see win, what you hope to see happen with the Women's Prize this year in their award ceremony. And I will see you in the next video. Bye.